Hey, it's Kellen, and today you guys are in for a treat. I have a real hero. I know I have physicians on here at times. I have best-selling authors who've done amazing things. But when you have somebody who's on the front lines at all times, not just during lockdown and COVID and pandemics, I'm talking about a real hero, Ricky Aikens. He's a hope dealer, a real life hope dealer, not a drug dealer, not a coke dealer, but he's delivering hope. And he doesn't have an album that I know of yet, and he's not trying to sell merch at the end of the day. So, and you guys get what I'm saying. But inner city innovators, Ricky, welcome to the show.
Thank you, man. I'm so excited to be here. I've been looking forward to it for a while. And like I said, man, I love getting to share the heart behind why I do what I do. So I like to thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
And I thank you. And some folks might be confused. Say, Kellen, you talk about business. Don't worry, we'll get there. Heroes have business too. We might show you how to be a hero is my hope and give you some hope. But Ricky, can you give, the people some background on your story, because it's so amazing and it will come better if you tell it than me.
Yeah.
Bits and pieces.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, the whole hope deal thing is a play on words because when I was growing up, the only role models we had in our community were the guys standing on those street corners. And I tell people all the time, oftentimes children are going to be what they see and that which they're most exposed to. And that was kind of like my journey into this world. My mother struggled with crack addiction around the time of my birth. So I was raised by my grandmother. And my grandmother had 7 children, and all of her children struggled with drug addiction and alcoholism. And I'm the third of my mom's 4 boys. Both of my older brothers would drop out to pursue drug dealing. So for me growing up and seeing my family really devastated by the crack epidemic and poverty, I felt like my lanes were very limited early on. I can remember even as early as 3rd grade being labeled emotionally handicapped and slow learning disabled. So I kind of, as I got to middle school, I started surrounding myself with young men who were from my community, guys that I could relate to, guys that I knew understood kind of where I was coming from in life. And that's when that path down the road to delinquency became kind of more refined. It started out, you're just stealing out of the corner store after school to provide something to eat. To a few years later, you're dabbling in the drug trades, and you and your friends are taking part in things that are costing people their lives. So, my life was really headed down a place of destruction. And I was really fortunate to have mentors come into my life in the form of godparents, pastors, Bible study leaders, mentors, barbers, just a lot of people who kind of saw the gift in me, or they saw a calling in me. They saw something in me where they continued to speak that into my heart. And after a few years, I began to listen and believe that voice, and having some lucky bounces come my way. I was eventually at the age of, I think I was around 17 years old when I completely dropped out of school. I had been expelled by the end of my 8th grade year, so I never really was as engaged in school as I should have been. And I remember it was beginning of my 11th grade year that I completely stopped going to kind of dabble into drugs full time. And I remember I had this experience. My mom was her drug addiction had really gotten the best of it, where we found ourselves living in a situation that we were always poor, but I had never remembered us being this poor. And basically we found ourselves living inside of a shed behind an abandoned house. And I remember I came home to that shed one night, and it's as if I had an epiphany. I realized that if I didn't begin to take the advice of all these people I had speaking into my life, I was going to end up dead, like many of my friends up to that point, or in prison like my older brothers. And that's when things really began to take a turn for me. I started taking advantage of those voices and the opportunities that they were presenting. And I eventually would get my GED. Then I would go on to graduate from EMT school to become an emergency medical technician, because I thought I wanted to become a fireman. And after graduating from EMT school, like I believe a lot of the lies that I kind of believed about myself kind of shredded away, because I never felt as adequate. I felt as smart as other people. And I felt like completing that milestone gave me a belief in myself that I didn't have before. And by the time I got to this point, I'm looking around and many of my friends weren't making the same strides in their life. Their lives were continuing to be given over to incarceration and death and things like that. So seeing that I was fortunate enough to escape a path that would have consumed me to be on one that was bringing hope and healing to my own life and my family. My mom ended up cleaning her life up and going to rehab. She's been clean over 10 years now. My little brother had went to college, played Division I basketball at University of Cincinnati, and now plays professional basketball in Brazil. My older brothers came home from prison and left the drug trade alone. And every person born after me is either finished high school or is in college now, and it all started when I began a shift in my life and speaking that into the people who came up after me. So I began seeing this shift in my family. And, I always ask the question, if this could happen for me and my family, and I consider my family to be one of the worst situations you could grow up in, why can't it happen for my peers? And I remember kind of forsaking my pursuit of becoming a fireman and going on staff at an organization in my community that worked with youth that came from the situation that I came from. And that's where I kind of really got the heart behind the work that I do now, was working with those kids, working in the community that I grew up in, and realizing that I could be what I never had to the kids coming up behind me. And that was kind of the inception. Everything I do today was kind of conceived through my life experiences and my desire to see better in communities like mine, not only here, but all around the country.
Okay, awesome, and what a beautiful turnaround for everybody. And I think that turnaround, even I know I found out my late 30s, a few months ago, that I had dyslexia and I always struggled. But people would, they laugh at you when you're in school, and sometimes they beat you, when you're not doing good in school. And then, and I was in one of those families, my mom wasn't letting anybody do a test on me. And Pops would not have been able to convince her at all. He's all right. Because they try to do that to majority of them. And I've worked in the school system, so I've been a supervisor at a psych hospital for a program, worked in the group homes and the rehabs like Phoenix Academy. And once they find that there may be a little something, you think different is what I call it. They try to label you, and that's where the problem starts.
Yeah.
That turnaround for you, though, that's not an easy thing, because okay, you can be bad, you can be good at being bad, but then when you turned around, now people are giving you the same type of pressure. How did you do that turnaround, and tell the people, what did you have to do? Did you have to separate yourself from your family at a time to do that? What happened?
I would say the biggest thing for me that I always somehow forget when I'm going through my story, it was my faith. My faith in God was the thing that really got me through, because it created I say it gave me the mental programming to realize that I need to separate myself from certain people and situations and the focus on myself. So that kind of gave me the language that I didn't have for it, and kind of the faith to follow through. So it was that, and it was the organization that I started working at. It was the more time I spent around them outside of my community, the less time I was spending around my friends and doing unproductive things. So I think it was my faith, and it was the people that I was surrounded with, man, because it really was one of those things that like my entire life only worked one way, and it was the survival mentality. It was the struggle. It was getting by. I can't really tell you times and when I was growing up that the lights and the water were on consistently at the same time. You either had lights or you had water. You never had the consistency of having a meal. So you're always in survival mode. So I'm spending time with these people who weren't from where I was from, you know, and they lived life differently. They looked at things differently. And I think that began to kind of open my mind to, like, you mean to tell me I don't have to sell dope to find significance in the eyes of people around me? Because when I was growing up, you know, you get this, like, when you grow, I grew up without my father, so I had this this hole in my heart, you know, as I look back, I realized a lot of the things that I was taking part in was to get accepted, to get affirmed, and to have people approve of me. And it really wasn't until I got around these people, and they kind of really believed in me before I believed in myself. And it was that time, man, outside of my community and seeing other things, man. I've had the opportunity to go to Haiti on a mission trip, which blew my mind. I got to go over to Uganda and Kenya, and I just was able to have these experiences, man, that a lot of my peers didn't have, man. So I think the people, my faith, the travel, it's really to the seeing that there is a world outside of the bubble that you live in. You know, I feel like a lot of people, when they look at people who grow up in communities like mine, they make swift judgments, you know, based on, oh, if I was there, I'd just be doing this, this, and this. And you don't realize if you were there, you'd be conditioned the same way they are, and you wouldn't even have the words to describe how you react in those situations the way you do now. So those are the things I feel like really planted to see the seeds for me to kind of make those transitions.
People will never, if you haven't been in the shoes, you don't know. And it's so easy to be able to judge. And, you know, you said some magic words when you talked about Africa. You're talking to Mr. Africa. Yeah. So we're going to talk about that.
All right.
Yeah, but people won't understand. And even my wife, I've known her 18 years and we've been married 12. She's from Africa, from Cameroon. And she will, you know, when she met me, she's like, why are y'all all so violent? I said, you have to be where you're at. I said, especially 80s coming up. And I would go, I'm from Oakland, but then move to the suburbs.
Yeah.
Fight on both sides because one place you talk funny, the other place you look funny, you know. And these hands get thrown well, and we train for this, you know.
Yeah.
This is what we did. So talk about inner city innovators, and I want to get to the nitty gritty. How did you start that? Because working for organizations and then saying, you know what, I think I can add another service or a better service, but you need dinero. So talk about how did you start and find funding to do that?
Right. Absolutely. Well, the first thing is the organization that I had got my start with was a predominantly white organization. And I would share my story a lot. And I saw the reactions that people would give. Basically, my story brought in a lot of money for this organization. And as I continued in the work, and I went from that organization to another youth serving organization, I always saw a disconnect between the work that was being done and what really needed to be happening on the grassroots level. So it was always in my mind, like, all right, these people are coming into our communities and they're starting these organizations and doing all this work. And you look at the people who need the work most and you see them slipping through the gaps. So I think I had begun seeing that early on, not knowing, but I'll fast forward to, I think it was around it was definitely the summer of 2015. And it was one of the deadliest years on record here in West Palm. We had over 100 plus murders, and most of them happened in the community I grew up in, the Tamarind Corridor. And Tamarind is less than a 2-mile radius of a community. Yeah, you had all of these murders taking place in this area. It's a predominantly black area. It's the inner city. And I remember one day, my cousin and I we were at his house, and every day we're watching the news, and it's somebody that we knew getting killed or killing someone. And it's just like, we knew what was happening. Like, we were younger, like we partook in it. You know, multiple times me and my friends were out at parties. We get in fights with guys run off, get a gun, and they shoot us off. You know, luckily I've never been shot, but I got many friends that have come close to losing their lives, and some are even gone, dead and gone today. But like we knew how these things were happening and why they were happening. But every time you watch the news and you see city leaders claiming to want to do something about it, it's the same. Oh, we're gonna do this and we're gonna do that. And I'm like, they have no true connection to what. Like, how could you even begin to do anything when you don't know what's going on? You know, and that was kind of like our. It was like, man, like, we're here. We know what's going on. How about we start providing that perspective? How about we start going to these meetings? So we really, man, just started showing up to city commission meetings and community forums. And it was just us at first. And then we started organizing some of the young men we work with. And we just show up and we provide our perspective on why the violence was happening. You know, we give our experiences growing up in the community and letting the outsiders know how the community works and really kind of helping them to kind of inform their practices for peacekeeping in the community. And after one particular community forum in general, because our only aim is we're just going to go provide this voice. You know, we were both working, had different things going on. We just wanted to provide this perspective. And that was it. And a week and a half after one community forum in particular, one of the young men I was with, I was always kind of the spokesman of the group. And I remember afterwards, a news reporter came up and she's like, hey, we want to learn more about your little group and like y'all efforts in the community. And I was like, all right. So we ended up going back and doing a news interview or whatnot and kind of highlighting what was going on in the community and what we were doing about it. And less than a week later, a young man that was with me that I mentored, he was gunned down walking home from the store with a group of his friends. And his name was Johnny Davis. And here was a young man that was young. You know, he was a recent high school graduate, was contemplating going into the military, and he was a new father. And here he was with us trying to use his voice to reduce the violence. And less than a week later, he was killed. And that was the straw that was the last straw for me, where I realized that peacekeeping couldn't be a part-time effort, where the city officials are only getting involved when things are heated up, or nonprofits are coming around when they think there's a funding opportunity. I realized that the work needed to be done and it needed to be done now. And that's where we got our start. Like I had no intention of becoming a nonprofit organization. My intention was just to stop my young brothers from dying. So we started out with community engagement walks, just walking up, talking to our brothers, warning them about the impact that the violence is happening. We organized peace marches, candlelight vigils for families who lost people. And I made it my mission that every young Black man that lost his life in our community had a name and had a story, because it was getting to the point where this was just an oh, this person died, that person died. And we kept like bringing this and drawing this attention to what was happening. And things just kind of grew from there to we started forming a partnership with our local governments, the government, to create jobs programs specifically geared towards the young men most likely to perpetrate and be victimized by gun violence. So it all just kind of started out like my experience in the nonprofit realm, realizing that, hey, if my story was good enough in the past to be used to bring in funds for these other organizations, I could use my own speaking ability and gift to bring attention to these issues that are hurting my community the most, and kind of things just aligning in a way where here I am a few years later and we're a nonprofit. And I'll let you kind of dig into that as you see fit.
Okay. And so when you say, okay, I want to start the nonprofit, or I want to start and I want to do these things, is the first money that you go after, is it like the government RFPs that you go after, or is it, inside the community and say, hey, this business owner, and what does that structure look like?
Got you. Well, how it worked for us, it was very interesting. It was very interesting how it worked for us. So we're just doing the work, no funding, not even thinking about funding. And I meet a guy, and he's like, hey, man, he's one of my good friends, Tom. Tom comes along and like, hey, if you really want to start garnering the support you need, you should probably incorporate. and he helped us get incorporated. So now we're just nickel and diming, raising in just enough to help us with our outreach. And because of our work kind of preceded us for so long, and we became known for our peacekeeping efforts, I attended a meeting with a friend of mine that I met at a conference a while ago. He had another gentleman with him, and the guy I gave him, the story about how our work started and what we were trying to do. And he had me apply at a foundation that he worked at. And that was the first grant that we had gotten. It was through a trust in North Carolina, the Keenan family. So they were the first foundation to trust us enough. And, I face all kind of barriers as an executive director and a founder, being that, I didn't go to school for what I'm doing. I'm a high school dropout, ex-drug dealer, from the hood, trying to bring good to it. So I face a lot of barriers that most traditional nonprofits wouldn't face on the pathway to funding. But this foundation was the first to really trust us. So they graced us with an $80,000 grant, which covered my salary for the first 2 years, $40,000 a year. And then there was another foundation that heard about me through the network, and they came and they had a gun violence prevention grant where they were trying to find they realized that our method of community transformation is the path forward, because as I kind of touched on earlier, what you often had in the past is a white, well-to-do guy comes into the Black community, sees some things that are wrong. He starts an organization, and he can go into his network to garner the funds needed to make that impact. But it's not at the impact doesn't translate as much because the people can't really relate to that agent of change. So what these these foundations were beginning to see, that if you have people that are from these situations that people respect and relate to, and they're the primary change agents, that's the best way to get peace into these communities. And so that second foundation that blessed us was Everytown for Gun Safety. And that was $100,000 grant. And and then I had a friend of mine that was connected to the Jewish Federation of Palm Beach County that was very interested and supportive of our work. And he stroked a check for $100,000 to get us through. So it really, it's been unique because I'm not that talented of a grant writer as of yet. So most of the support we've garnered so far has been through agencies and foundations kind of realizing our niche and approaching us with opportunities. But, now we're in our fourth year, and now I'm really having to apply and look at those government grants and things like that, especially if I'm looking for long-term sustainability funding, Roz.
And I want to tell the people, when you hear these numbers, think about that. Ricky is right there on the streets, life at risk, on the same streets that he survived, and working with different organizations. I'm a consultant, so I've seen so many different projects and work with, people who they were like, one of my friends, he said, Kellen, we're 40 deep in our organization. Every time we move to a city, they change the rules. He's like, but we were coming to, meetings in Mercedes, and they were coming to meetings in Bentleys. I've worked and had government projects, and I'm like, whoa, there's this much money to get so many volunteers, and there's money there. But the people who have actually been through the struggle, no one's there for the money. You're there because, one, you kind of need that energy around you.
Right.
Stay balanced, and you're in the hood anyway. You might as well bring some good to it.
Right.
But that I love that's thank you for the transparency, because somebody wants to start out there, but they didn't know how until right then. And that's how you start, by just doing, and then it's like a domino effect once you connect with the people. So your organization, the jobs programs you mentioned, what other services do you offer and provide the community?
Right. So our three primary programs is our Hope Dealer Mentoring, which I got to represent with this shirt. Our Hope Dealer Mentoring program is focused on social emotional learning and leadership development and community service. And we focus on social emotional learning because I realized that you really have to teach young people growing up in communities of concentrated disadvantage how to process their environments in ways that aren't self-destructive. You know, when you're growing up, like this was a constant struggle I had, like growing up. My mom, you know, there were times in her life where she was literally choosing her addiction over caring for my sibling and I. And that's frustrating, man. Like, so you take on this pressure at 15, 16 years old where you feel like you got to go out and make something happen. You don't really have the supports and the networks to process your life. And so that's what we really focus on, man. Many of the young men that we work with are coming from single parent homes, very dysfunctional situations. And let me tell you how our Hope Dealer mentoring sessions look. It's a hybrid mentoring program, so we combine individual, group, and peer-to-peer mentoring. Now, our one-on-one mentoring is focused on cognitive behavioral therapy, you know, getting them to see unproductive thought patterns, its impact on their feelings, emotions, and their actions, in hopes that they'll be able to kind of see them things on their own, you know. And our second is our peer-to-peer mentoring, where the guys are just hanging out and kind of keeping this positive peer pressure going that we create in our group mentoring dynamic. Now, our group mentoring dynamic, we call it the circle. And we got about 30 young men in our program, and we all sit in a circle. We get the chairs and we line the room in a huge circle, and I'll do a deep breathing exercise to bring everybody into a space. That circle is a very sacred time for the young men. They know that the time in that circle is separated from our time before, what happened at home. We're entering into a space where we're going to respect ourselves, we're going to respect each other, and we're going to open up and we're going to be vulnerable. And once we've come into that circle time, I'll bring up a topic like trauma, PTSD, or something that the young men are dealing with. And we'll just go around and we'll break it open and we'll talk about those things. There are no wrong answers. It's just really getting them comfortable with the idea of processing their emotions and sharing what and how they're feelings. And you know, man, I'd love to get one of my young men on here in the future if we could ever do this again. But like hearing these guys come back, like even when the coronavirus thing happened and we weren't able to meet in person, you know, you got guys calling me like, yeah, man, it's crazy. I feel like I need to meet with the group. I've been going through some things and I feel like I've been bottling it up. And like that bottling up sometime is what, like, you want to know why young men are so quick to pick up a gun and solve their disputes with a firearm. It's because they don't know how to. There's so much pent up rage and anger, you know, from the picked on, being bullied, seeing mom struggle to abuse. And you can only tolerate that stuff being pent up for so long. So you're seeing these young men like process, and they just become different people. And like I said, we got 30 young men in our program. 40% of the young men in our program have been shot before. They've had a bullet pierce their skin. Not one of those young men have gone back to reoffend or to shoot or be involved with gun violence again. And I'm telling you, I think it has a lot to do with helping them process their emotions, and my team and I being available. You know, like, I don't believe in drawing a line, that, and I believe that whatever these young men need, whether that's a father figure, a big brother, a mentor, my team and I need to be there to be that for them. You know, we're only a team of 3. I only got 3 staff: my executive assistant, my program coordinator, and myself. And we know that, like, if we want to have the impact that we need to have, we need to be available to these young men at all times. So it's not out of the ordinary for me to get a call at 12 a.m. or 2 a.m. or from a parent and her son's doing something, and I got to go and meet that need. So our Hope Dealer mentoring program is kind of like the shell that keeps all these young men a part of something bigger than themselves, you know. And that's my baby, the Hope Dealer mentoring program. Second is our community engagement walks and activities. And that's where we simply get out, we walk the streets, and we try to recruit young men from the community into our programs. That's where we rub shoulders with the older guys, the drug dealers on the corners, and we have to have a relationship with them, because we reached a point where, like, when I was growing up, I couldn't sell drugs around anyone that knew my big brothers, because my big brothers made it clear they didn't want me selling drugs. Like, we kind of lost that standard where now these guys on the corners are kind of inviting the kids into that life. So we go to these guys and say, hey, like, send them to us. You know, you see the misery that this lifestyle has brought you. Let's create a different way for these young men. And even the drug dealers that have worked with us to send young men to our directions, they eventually get caught for something. And they call me, hey, man, like, could you come speak at my sentencing hearing? And I go and I say, Your Honor, I know this man did what he did, and he's going to have to pay the consequences for that. But let me tell you how he's kind of helped me in my work and keeping young men from making those same decisions. So it kind of helps me maintain that street level support that I need to make sure we're successful in doing our job, because you cannot do the kind of work we do without street level support. You know, you just can't. And another program we got is our anti-violence workshop, where we go into schools, community centers, churches, any youth-serving organization with the aim of facilitating a workshop with their young people, teaching them how to stay safe in their communities. And SAFE is an acronym we use. The S is for be smart about who you surround yourself with. A is for be alert to your surroundings at all times. F is for be fearless about getting yourself out of situations that could cost you your life or your freedom. And the E is for be an example of what it takes to stay safe in your community. And we try to get this message into them while they're young, elementary school, so that as they're older, they know what peer pressure is, what it looks like, and how susceptible they are growing up in a community like the one they live in. And lastly, we do something called, we call it violence response or shooting response, where every time there's a youth involved shooting in our community, we get a text message. You know, the same dispatch that goes to EMS, we get that to our phones. And we respond to those shootings to kind of gather information if there's youth involved and see if we can make a connection with the family. And oftentimes we do candlelight vigils. We help bring media attention to the loss of life and really help control the narrative that this isn't just another life, that murder isn't a normal thing or an accepted thing in our community. So those are the different programs we do, and everything that we do is created so that the young men in our mentoring program could do it themselves. It's my philosophy that real change happens when the people who need it lead it. So once the young men have gone through our Hope Dealer mentoring program, the leadership development model, they'll be trained to do community engagement walks in the community to reach out to their peers. They'll be trained in doing these anti-violence workshops to elementary age kids. They'll be trained to do everything that we do, you know, because my dream is that in the next 10 years, I won't be leading this organization. It'll be one of my mentees that I'm working with now and training them in the work. And that's what it has to be. You know, this has to be something that's led for youth and by the youth that are most impacted by these things, or it eventually loses its power.
Man, I want to applaud you for not being like some of our elders and saying, I'm going to stay in this position until the day that I die. Go even globally. We see even, you know, African presidents, they want to die in the office. And it's like some of this work, like you said, has to be done by young people because they have the pulse, they have the lingo, they have the thought process.
Exactly.
Things that you can do. Like, you know, you'll be successful in something else. And that's a beautiful thing. You know, I love that you connected with, you know, the emergency response unit. Was that a difficult thing to do? I know a nonprofit that did that in Massachusetts, and it wasn't as difficult as many people think.
Right. I had a friend of mine who worked in dispatch, and he created an app where so I don't even have to work directly with emergency responders. I'll get the text and I'll show up with them. But our city just created a new program called Recap. And the recap program, you know, we get these badges. So now, you know, I get my text alert through my friend who created this app, and I show up and I'm able to show police officials my badge, and they could give me access to the family and things of that nature. So it is something that's constantly in development. But I think just having friends that kind of had the wherewithal to see the kind of support I needed and provided it.
Okay, and is that app, is that a just for your organization, or is that something that people can download? We like to give folks.
I could definitely find out and make. I'm not sure if it's a local thing, but I could find out and get you that information that you could share with the audience, because I told my friend it should be something that's happening nationally, especially with people doing the kind of work I'm doing.
Yeah, and I wanna make sure that people know, but also, and I'm gonna go business, and folks, you got to understand that community activism, it takes money, so you have to have a business hat. But one thing that I learned at an organization, what was happening with some friends of mine, was when they would go to their city, to a new city, and because they were new and they're like, who are all these black folks, and they get 3 or 4 houses, and got a boxing coach who's a professional boxing coach, and they come clean up the streets. One, are they drug dealers themselves? That's the thing, because
right,
suit or ties, and I'm sure you deal with that, even the way you present yourself.
Right.
Still connected. But two, the money. What they found out is they did not know that what they were doing, that they could kind of franchise, and that was intellectual property. So you kick us out of the city, but you are going to pay us for our program. And most people, you don't hear about that stuff. Like, what? You can franchise that? Have you dealt with any of that?
Not yet. And that's the thing I'm kind of building out right now, because my model is a little different in the sense that I don't want to, because we do want to expand. My dream, my vision in the next 10 years is to have a Hope Dealer clique in every inner city throughout Palm Beach County, And the way I plan on doing that is not through me and my team going into these communities and trying to create change, but basically identifying myself in each of those communities. There's going to be someone with a similar mindset and disposition that I could go in and kind of mentor in the philosophy and the game plan and funnel them the tools and resources they need to recruit like-minded individuals and to begin to work on that level. Because where I have the social capital in my community, because my older brothers were neighborhood drug dealers, so the respect that they got kind of came to me, and all of their network became my network as far as being known and respected enough in the community for the support I get. I won't have that support, say, if I go into our next city, Riviera Beach, or down to Delray or something like that. So my philosophy would be to identify and to give them our game plan. So onto your point about the intellectual property, that's something we're building out now. Like, how do we create our manifesto, our game plan, so that when we deliver it, we have something that we're able to get out that's a part of our growth and development going forward. So it's definitely something I could use your advice on. You seem to know a lot about that, and I'm open to learn, man.
I told you before we started, we are going to be neighbors. We get out of here, man, next month.
All right.
Next month, I cannot wait. You'll be getting, calls, because I want to see, when things get back to normal.
Yeah.
I want to see, because, it's all good in the hood. Have those meetings gone to Zoom? And I say that because I'm part of a group called Dads. And has here in Seattle, everybody from ex-Seahawks, ex-dealers, people sometimes, because they also work inside the jails, inside the alternative schools, but they have people who come straight out of prison, 10, 20 years. First stop is Dads, and now everything is on Zoom, which at least for me, it does more than church, because I've done church professionally. I've written a book on the entertainment industry and in movies, in the church, the gospel. And let me just say, the church is hurt. So I'd rather be where, the people and us men, we can talk like men and not be, have a hashtag, but get some clarity too, because we don't have it all. We don't have the answers.
Exactly.
So
You're absolutely
have you done the Zoom yet?
Yeah, we have done Zoom. That's the way our mentoring has gone, since all the social distancing message came about. So that's our primary way. And you hit a good point, man, especially touching on like the ex-felons and things that come out and get to be a part of those groups. Like those are the kind of guest speakers I enjoy bringing around my young men the most. I had this one fellow, Talmadge. He first went to prison when he was about 16, and he spent 27 years in prison, and he got out because they did this, the unfair youth sentencing guidelines, and he's just a success story. He's gotten out. He works for the county now. But man, to look in these young people's eyes when they see someone who's came from where they'd likely end up if they don't make the right decisions is beyond powerful, man. So I want to touch on that because you mentioned it. But yeah, man, Zoom has been a great for us, man, because we got to keep these guys engaged, and we even have to go do like in-person visits. One thing that I feel like is often forgot with people, they forget the hood operates by a different set of rules normally. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But somehow we think because this virus and this pandemic came about that, oh, we're all on the same page. Everybody's self-isolating. The hood's on. Like, no, these kids are still in situations where it's life as normal. Only thing, can't nobody work or do what they need to do to keep food on the table. And another thing, it's easy to self-isolate at home when you live in an environment you want to be in. But these kids are being forced to stay in situations where, roaches and rodents and just the dilapidation of their living situations. So, we do Zoom where possible, but we're not afraid to go in and to meet with these guys and pull them out when needed to just catch a breath of fresh air and regain perspective.
And we really got to pray because we always know the summers get hot and the streets get hotter, and now that everybody is forced to wear a mask, it's I mean, and the police are looking the other way because they're thinking about their health and everything. It's going to be a prayerful summer. Now I'm from a school where protect yourself, folks, but we also have to understand that as us, we can be walking in a neighborhood and people gun us down. So I really mean protect yourself because we that's what we have to do to stay around for our families. And I'm sure I'll raise my kids until I can see great grandchildren.
Oh yeah, and I'm really considering becoming a concealed carrier. I was thinking about it yesterday. I kind of mentioned before we got onto this. I was doing a kind of a 2-year anniversary news story on the loss of one of the young men that I had worked with. And the reality is, I'm exposed. There was the same person that killed that young man. I probably jog by every morning on my morning jog through the neighborhood, So when you talk about fighting for justice in communities that have been riddled by injustice for so long, it's a dangerous thing. And, and I really had to sit down and think about that the other day, man. Like you're operating in a situation where it's not black and white. There's so much gray, man. And so I began asking myself that question, man, like, I probably really should take that seriously, man, because you really just never know. You really just never know.
Especially with what you do, and I'm gonna my next words are I'm gonna carefully do it. So if my wife hears this, she won't be like, "Why just say that on air?"
Yeah.
But I've worked even for CPS, and I was an investigator. And I would go investigate Skinhead, the Klan, and the joke was, why do we send our only black investigator in Lubbock, Texas, of all places, to do that? Because they knew what they were doing. Don't think when I see guns on the walls and I'm hearing other investigators get beat up that I'm not protecting myself. I'm I was concealed carry, and I agree with concealed carry all the way. I'm in Washington State. I have open carry here. I have never been pulled over by the police. I never been bothered by the police. If anything, we have great conversations where I'm at because where I'm at. But I know when I go down south, it's two fronts sometimes. and you have to protect yourself and that. That's how I'm going to segue over to Mother Africa. I need to tell the people, because if you saw my room, you see the flags and everything. But Africa, we have investment there. We brought 30 people last year through a YouTube client of mine, and we changed lives. I didn't know we were going to change lives until I see people crying, saying, I'm here. And I'm like, wow, we just changed lives. So talk about Africa and your experience.
Oh my gosh, bro. So like I get there, man, and it's so surreal. I feel like we can underestimate that as Black Americans here. You get there and I'm like, man, like this is the motherland. Like this is it. And the people there were just so like just welcoming. It's as if I was like from there. You know, that's the like it was welcome home. That was the greeting I got. Welcome home, brother. And they were just so joyous, man, and just so happy to see you. And that was like that was the biggest thing to me, was just that brotherhood, that kindredness. And then, man, the beauty. We were driving through Kenya, man, and just the greenness, the lushness, to see monkeys and trees and fruits, and it was like, man, I can't even, like, my body, like, I feel like I'm there when I'm describing it, man, just being enraptured in it. And it was just a different world, man. It really was. And it was something that I always keep with me in my heart. And I definitely want to go back. And if I could go back, I definitely want to go to West Africa this time, you know? But like, man, I feel like it's a shame. I don't know if there is or isn't a program that exists right now where people can make that expedition over, man. But it definitely was life changing to me, man. Like I definitely feel like I'm a part of something larger than the bubble we grow up so often in here.
Like they say, Karibu, Kenya. You see, I keep my Kenya band on me.
I love that.
Kenya versus Uganda. Which one did you prefer? This is gonna start some conflict. Yeah. Which one?
All right.
And why?
I would say Kenya. I don't know if it was because of the places that we went and like just the region, but like we we're just at some retreat center there that just was just beautiful, man, beautiful. And but I would say the people in Uganda, like I felt more, just a more closeness there. But, you know, in Kenya, we probably didn't spend as much time with people there as I would have liked, because we were headed into this retreat center. But as far as like, if I could like go back to either one again, I'd probably say Kenya.
Okay. Now, did you go to Mombasa, or where were you in Kenya?
I'm not sure where I was in Kenya. I think I was in Entebbe, in Uganda, if I'm getting that right. Because it's probably around 7 years ago, 6 or 7 years ago. But I can't recall where exactly. I know it was close to the border, probably 2 or 3 hours from the border, because we were close to the border cities.
Okay, and see, that is, I got a trip for you coming up.
Yeah.
When they open up borders and they're not going to make Americans quarantine, whenever that we get to that point.
Yeah.
Because people, I've been to 16 plus countries, and people say,
wow,
"Were you a missionary?" I say, "No, I've never gone as a missionary, but we do his work everywhere we go, in theory." Now, I was a young man too, traveling, so I was a heathen too at point.
Yeah.
But we're always, giving now, because
Right.
life is focused.
Right.
I got some things, because I think that when I talk to folks who've done missionary work, where they see the beauty, they didn't see the opportunity always for the business. And what we do here can be done there. And I go to the nitty gritty. I go to the hood. When I'm in everywhere I go, I gotta go to the hood.
Yeah.
That's what it is.
I gotta go with you then.
And you know,
I gotta go.
Tickets right now are so cheap, where we were looking at going to Cameroon, because again, my wife is from there, and we were going to get there for it was 2,000 or under 2,000 for 4 tickets, where the last time we went, it was $8,000
Wow.
that we paid, for these are coach tickets, people.
Wow.
So
2,000 for 4
time.
tickets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I've gone to Africa round trip from San Francisco to, it was South Africa, and I stopped in London. My best record was $550. Now that was 15 years ago, but you can find those deals if you know where you're to look, and if you're ready to go.
Yeah. Goodness gracious.
Yeah.
I can imagine those kind of prices. And you said from San Francisco?
San Francisco, stopped in London for a week or so, stayed with a friend, and then I just delayed my trip, then went to South Africa, and I was like, yeah. This is it right here. I didn't have no money.
Yeah.
But when I got to Africa, I had money.
Right.
All you need is to be rich out there. All you need is $3,000 a month, and you are well off. And I had 1,000, 2,000, and I was like, I'm winning. So
yeah.
So that's that. How is Haiti? I can't wait to go to Haiti. Once we move to Florida, I'm trying to.
Yeah, I'm telling you, man. Like that, Haiti surprised me, man. Like the most, because everything I thought I knew about Haiti was just like what you see on TV or Feed the Children commercial, like extreme poverty and things like that. And it was that. There was a lot of that because we went after the earthquake. But man, when I tell you, it is one of the most beautiful places I've ever been. Like I was not expecting the hills, the mountainous regions, the greenness, the lushness of the area. It's just mountainous, man. And the people. The funniest thing was like when I always get people always ask if I'm Haitian, right? And so I'm always like, my dad isn't, my mom isn't. But I'm like, Mom, you sure you know who my dad is? Like, so I'm over there in Haiti, and all the kids, they'll come, I'm playing with the kids and stuff. And then I talk, and they just bust out laughing. Like, they couldn't conceptualize that someone that looked like them couldn't speak the language. So that was they blasted me for that, man. But it was one of the most beautiful times in my life, man. And, like, I still got some of the pictures from that trip. Man, like it's beautiful. And next time, and even the beaches, man, next time I like go to any place, I don't want to go on a mission trip. I just want to go as a citizen to really enjoy those places, man, because I saw some things I would have liked to do, but I couldn't at the time. And like their beaches, man, like you don't hear about the beach in Haiti, but it's a thing and it's beautiful.
and my French sucks, and I know my Creole is non-existent, right?
Yeah.
And so, did you find that there was a language barrier while you were there? Like, did you always need an interpreter?
Oh yeah, absolutely. All the time. The only words I could say was "ça passe," "muy bien," "Jesus loves you." Like that is it. I kept it simple, and I just make sure anything I need to say, I have my guy right there with me. But that was hard. That was hard because I'm just so used to just talking. You take for granted that language barrier until you're in that situation.
Yeah, and it's not a bad thing because you got by and you survived, and I want more Americans to understand you will survive not knowing.
Right.
You need to know the food, and you need to know Haitians like their pickles, and you better get
the
back of the refrigerator because
that's
the one that's going to be the spiciest. And but no.
And one more lesson I got right when I was in Africa, right? I go over there. And we're eating at this lady's house. And she literally, the chicken was out back. She went out back, grabbed it, brought it in, cut it up. I ain't never had my chicken like that before, right? And another thing I know, when you eating over there, you got to eat it all. Or it's to the fence, to the host. So I'm there like, I got my full. I'm ready to go. And my friend comes over and explains the situation. I'm like, oh, I got to finish this. And it was the longest meal of my life, but I definitely learned something.
You do have to do that, but let me say, there's a warning, and I'm a foodie, right? I'm
yeah.
And people say, really? I say, yeah, I like to do.
Yeah.
I got E. coli on one of my trips.
Oh,
And
wow.
it was because I'm sitting, near the beach. I'm just living my best life. You couldn't tell me
Yeah.
I'm not from Cameroon right now. And a friend
Yeah.
who's a YouTuber, he was like, hey, and I'm with my family, and he's
Yeah.
our driver. And he's like, hey, Kellen, you eat snails? I'm thinking I'm Andrew Zimmerman. I'm like, yeah, I eat snails. I ain't never had snails in my life. I don't know where these snails came from, but they're on a barbecue skewer, right?
Yeah.
They
Yeah.
don't look like snails. They look like it could have been alligator, which I like alligator. My wife and I went to Grambling.
Yeah.
I like alligator. I'm like, yeah. My wife said, I don't want no snails. I eat
Yeah.
everything is good. Few days later, I tell my father-in-law, my mother-in-law, yeah, I had snails. They said, what? Snails? We don't even eat that. And my father-in-law had possum ready for me. He was like,
Yeah.
he never had it. I said,
Yeah.
possum on. I got E. coli. I know off the snails because I was the only one to eat it, and I had everything except death, bleeding from all ends. So if you don't want to eat something, folks, just I'm Ital, or I'm a vegetarian, but I recovered and ate snails here in the States at a chemical spot, and snails are all good. You just gotta mind has to.
Oh man, I don't know, bro. You lost me at possum and the snails, man.
I really think I'm on a TV set, like I'll go have.
Yeah.
I remember first time having ostrich. My wife wouldn't go with me. It was a restaurant. She's like, I don't want. I said, I need to have some ostrich. So you just explore, but that's me.
Yeah.
To be,
I like that mentality though. Yeah. I like that mentality.
Yeah. So, no, with that, I want to ask you the question I ask every guest, but I have to rephrase it for you because your whole life of what you're doing is the community. And what I ask every guest is, what is their community give back that they're doing? And we know that right now.
Yeah.
Want to do in the future. And you've told us some of that, but is there anything else that you want to do in the future for the community?
If there's one thing I could do for the community, I want to create a model that can enlist people who never thought that they could have a part in making a difference. I want to give them the model, the example, and the resources they need to be the change they want to see in their community. I want people to really stop looking at outsiders to come into our communities and into our situations to make a change when we have all the incentive that we need, when we have all the life experience that we need to really be the change on that level. So if I could give nothing else to my community, I think that example, that example would be enough, man, because that's what fires me up. And to see even the young men that I work with beginning to take hold. I didn't have an image for what I'm doing now, and now they have that image, and seeing how they adapt to it has been amazing. So I just imagine what that could look like on a wider scale.
Well, with that, you guys, I don't want to give you a game overload. I'm going to talk with Ricky for a few minutes after this, and I want to make sure that you guys like, share, subscribe, and send this to somebody who needs to be inspired in times like these. They can create the change that Ricky does. And feel free, if you really, say, I want to learn more, hit Ricky up. His information for the organization will be in the description box. And maybe you are the next, intern, volunteer. Maybe you're the next paid worker. Things are only going to go up. So, Ricky, I thank you for coming on.
Thank you. It's been a great pleasure.
Blessings, y'all.
Game over.